Jason?
Good afternoon. Welcome to the Board of Regents Public Forum on the fiscal year 2015 President's Recommended Operating Budget. We thank you for joining us today. Also, individuals in Crookston, Morris, Duluth, Rochester, and the general public are able to observe the comments made here today. I do want to mention that Regent Cohen has stepped out in the forum to participate in the medical school graduation ceremony this afternoon. Before we start, I'd like to remind the audience about the purpose of today's forum and the procedures we'll follow. First, this is an opportunity for the university community and the public to voice support, concerns, or suggestions regarding the proposed university's budget. It is not a dialogue, so if you pose specific questions, please don't expect answers or response today from the board or the president. We will listen to your concerns and suggestions and consider them. If your comments pose a factual question, the president can ask a member of the staff to provide you with information after the meeting. The board reviewed the president's operating budget for the coming fiscal year at its meeting earlier today. The board will vote on the proposed recommendations during its meeting June 13th of this year. I'll call your name when it's your turn to speak. Please come to the podium at the presenter's table up in front of me. And for the record, please provide your name and affiliation, student, faculty, member, staff, public, etc. The microphones do not need to be adjusted. Each speaker will be allowed up to 3 minutes. You'll see a warning light when 1 minute's left and another light when your time is up. If you have handouts, please give them to our board staff here off to my left, or some folks may be arriving later behind us, so they can be distributed to all the regents after the meeting. Okay, I've got a list of speakers then, and we will start with Trevor Ames, Chair of the Twin Cities Dean Council.
Chairman Beeson, members of the Board of Regents, and President Kaler, thank you for this opportunity to discuss the university's budget process this year, and specifically how it has affected the College of Veterinary Medicine. Like other units at the University of Minnesota, the College of Veterinary Medicine was asked to do a 1.5% administrative reallocation plus an additional 1.2% reallocation against other non-sponsored funding. This reallocation was accomplished through elimination of administrative positions, reductions in salary augments for administrative activities, and other non-personnel expense reductions. The budgetary decisions are difficult, and ongoing administrative reductions are especially challenging for units where they were lean to begin with. The reallocation process does create funds that can deal with the University of Minnesota's financial challenges, as well as create a strategic investment pool to support new faculty hires, needed renovations for research and education. Out of the University of Minnesota's budgetary decisions, the College of Veterinary Medicine is receiving reallocation investments in fiscal year 15 that will provide funding for several key initiatives in the college. As you know, the college is very worried about the debt load of our students, which is unsustainable and clearly affecting career decisions for our graduates. Tuition rates have been rising significantly as a result of significant reductions in state appropriations and continued expense escalations. Our four-year tuition is one of the highest in the nation, with the second highest level of student debt. This point will be further emphasized when you hear from one of our students later in this session. Based on our budget decisions with the university leadership, the College of Veterinary Medicine will be investing reallocation funds in ongoing tuition reductions for our professional degree veterinary students. We will continue the reductions in summer semester tuition for our fourth-year students that was approved in the fiscal year 14 budget. In addition, we have proposed a freeze in tuition increases for all 4 years of our veterinary medicine program for both resident and non-resident students. The College of Veterinary Medicine is very appreciative of the university's support to address this critical issue for our students. Additional investments in the fiscal year 15 will be used for facility improvements and filling tenure track research faculty positions. Teaching facility renovations will include improvements to 2 teaching labs, as well as the teaching animal housing facility. Research facilities will be renovated with remodeling of existing labs to support new research faculty hiring. The College of Veterinary Medicine is planning a number of important research faculty hires in fiscal year 15, with a new chair of the Veterinary and Biomedical Sciences Department being the most important. The MnDrive investments are also providing significant opportunities for the College of Veterinary Medicine and other colleges and schools across the university. The College of Veterinary Medicine, so in summary, I would like to thank the university for its support and state that I support the university's budget. Thank you.
Shireen Harazik, excuse my pronunciation if I've correctly spelled it.
Good afternoon. My name is Shireen Horzek. I am the president of AFSCME Local 3800. Between 2003 and 2013, academic administrative positions increased by 39%, while unionized clerical jobs decreased by 10%. During the same period, management wages increased by 33% compared to 25% for AFSCME. Eliminating low-paying union jobs and replacing them with highly paid salaried positions flies in the face of common sense as a response to ongoing financial challenges. In the wake of the Wall Street Journal article, the administration committed to freeze tuition and cut administrative costs by $15 million last year and $20 million this year. We laud the tuition freeze. Students shouldn't leave a public university saddled with a debt load they'll spend the rest of their lives paying off so that management can get rich. We call for genuine cuts to administration. Using one collegial unit as an example, last year, $99,000 was cut from the newly created leadership pool, while $180,000 was cut from the support to mission pool, where all frontline unionized jobs reside. That's basically eliminating 3 frontline staff and 1/2-to-1 administrator. This year, the same unit intends to cut $380,000 from support to mission and $130,000 from leadership. I doubt this unit stands alone in cutting direct support at nearly double the level of management. We demand a full accounting of the $15 million in savings this year to ensure you are not balancing the budget on our backs. We call upon the university to prioritize and respect the people directly supporting the students and faculty that are at the core of the university's mission. You can do this by, first, stopping the costly and discriminatory background checks that treat new and transferring staff as potential criminals. Second, fully restoring the Regents scholarship. Third, exploring a sliding scale plan for health insurance. Raises are on a percentage basis, so why shouldn't health insurance be? Management salaries have outstripped those of union workers by more than 8%. With the sliding scale, union members would regain between 1% and 4% of their total annual salary, a significant increase for those who live paycheck to paycheck. By choosing to pay slightly more for managers' insurance so that low-paid staff can pay significantly less, university leaders can take an important step towards reducing historic inequities at the U. Finally, we call upon you to listen rather than silence the staff, students, and faculty who are working to hold the university accountable and to make this a more diverse and respectful institution. If you had paid attention to what we were saying over half a decade ago and instituted some of our recommendations, perhaps the university wouldn't have been making headlines in the Wall Street Journal. The Board of Regents has the responsibility to hold the university administration accountable. It's about time you put away the rubber stamp and started doing so. Thank you.
Cassandra Hendricks. Cassandra Hendricks.
Hello, my name is Cassandra Hendricks, and I'm a student with the University Pro-Choice Coalition. And I'm speaking today on behalf of my sister and myself, and my sister is unable to be here. I'm an English major and graduating senior from the Twin Cities campus. My sister could not attend today's budget forum due to her intense work and class schedule, and I'm relating her testimony to all of you on behalf of her. This is her testimony. My name is Lindsay Hendricks, and I'm a second-year undergraduate biology major at the university. During the school year, I worked 25 to 30 hours a week between 3 different jobs on campus in order to cover monthly living expenses and pay as much of tuition as possible while in school. Despite the number of jobs I have, I will graduate with at least $35,000 of debt, assuming that tuition and fees do not increase. After graduating, I aspire to attend medical school and become a doctor. Aside from diligently working to maintain high grades, do volunteer work, and participate in research, I have to worry about paying for school. Medical school is extremely difficult to get into, and I'm equally concerned about just paying the application fees as I am my academics and involvement that I need to get accepted. And then there's the astronomical cost of medical school. My debt from undergraduate education will strongly affect the decisions I make in where I can even afford to apply to medical school, let alone attend. Again, that was my sister's testimony. My story is not that different from hers, except that I'm graduating in 1 week. I'm a 4-year undergrad, paying in-state tuition due to reciprocity with Wisconsin. I worked throughout high school, and I've worked all 4 years while I attended the U, but this is not enough to cover the expenses of this university. My sister and I come from a middle to lower middle class family. They are unable to and should not be expected to take on the huge burden of tuition, so I'm graduating with over $55,000 in student loans. Because of my debt, upon graduation, I will be moving back home to Wisconsin in order to save money and begin to pay back my loans. When I think about my future plans, I feel like I am constantly deterred from certain options because of my student loans. I have no interest in moving away from the Twin Cities, but I have no choice. I chose to follow my passions and study English at this institution with the goal of becoming a professor, but I'm not sure that fulfilling this dream for 4 years is going to be worth the next 35 years of loan payments. While I appreciate the work that has been done to freeze tuition at the U, tuition is being frozen at a level that is still completely unaffordable. Tens of thousands of dollars in student loans should not be the norm to attend this or any university. I urge you all to understand this university needs to move forward just holding the line at a tuition freeze, let alone one for just in-state undergraduates. If the Board of Regents wants to help build strong leadership in Minnesota, it must move towards lowering tuition for everyone. This means, among other initiatives my fellow students will bring up later, pressuring the state to reinvest and work diligently to engage students in that effort. I hope we can all work together to create a sustainable future for the community of students.
Andrew McNally.
Andrew McNally, President of the Council of Graduate Students. President Kaler, Provost Hanson, Regents of the University of Minnesota. I speak on behalf of 8,000 of my fellow doctoral and master's students, the largest cohort of the most motivated, thoughtful, and socially conscious emerging scholars in the United States. Yet many of us suffer from a gnawing pessimism rooted in the suspicion that more and more state, university, and federal leaders come to budget meetings ready to bury graduate education rather than to praise it. Just as the cynic knows the price of everything and the value of nothing, too much of the conversation surrounding graduate education's future reflects that we're very good at calculating the cost of a graduate student, but we're very bad at promoting the collective value graduate students return to the health, prosperity, and just future of our community, our state, and our world. When we ask for the resources to succeed, we're most often told that the value does not merit the investment. That unlike undergraduate education, pursuing an advanced degree represents a personal choice and a private good, unworthy of public commitment. Yet we teach in many, if not most, of the undergraduate courses and receive, on average, as high or higher teacher ratings than faculty. Virtually none of the crucial lab research at this university could be done without us. It's we who will figure out how to grow food more nutritious to feed the world on fewer resources, how to contain and cure the most malevolent infectious diseases, what it will take to erase global poverty, to combat climate change, how to redress structural inequities of race, gender identity, and class. I think there's even someone working on how to get the snowplows in St. Paul to run faster. Yet our funding has been cut 10%. We've seen stagnating support for crucial fellowship programs that must be expanded. From STEM to CLA, we face diminishing success at acquiring jobs after completing degrees in lower percentages. Yours is a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you support graduate education robustly, its long-term products will benefit the public robustly. If graduate education continues to be the object of neglect, our society and communities will continue to be impoverished. If there's one thing that I can recommend that you do to support graduate education, please grow the fellowship available for graduate students to compete with the top public research universities. Measured against Berkeley and Michigan, the amount of funding available for students to conduct research is paltry. This funding is necessary to attract the most qualified students, reduce time to degree, and increase completion rates. Thank you so much.
Jean Quam.
Thank you for the opportunity to comment on the budget. Chair Beeson, President Kaler, and members of the Board of Regents. My name is Jean Quam, and I speak to you today from the vantage point as the Dean of the...
I'm going to ask you to leave the room. Ask you to leave the room. This is disrupting our meeting. Please leave the room, or we'll have the room cleared.
Hello.
Resume your testimony.
My name is Jean Quam. I speak to you today from the vantage point as the Dean of the College of Education and Human Development, as a faculty member for over 30 years, and the parent of a sophomore on our Duluth campus. I'd like to speak in support of 3 items within the budget. First, this proposed budget freezes undergraduate resident tuition for the second time in 2 years. Our college has nearly 2,500 undergraduate students. We are the most diverse college at the university. For those students who are working hard to afford to stay in school and graduate on time, they will have to be less concerned about the increased levels of debt that they may face. In order to attract an even more diverse student body, we need to keep tuition affordable. The freeze on tuition, however, does not only affect our students, it affects every part of our college. We're highly dependent on tuition, particularly undergraduate tuition. Of our non-sponsored, unrestricted funding, 41% of our budget comes from undergraduate tuition. When you factor in graduate tuition, the percentage increases to 74%, and that percentage has increased dramatically over the last 5 years as state support has plunged. The tuition freeze has forced us to examine every operation in the college, resulting in some $1 million in reductions, largely in personnel, in the last year alone. Additionally, we've provided multiple ways to help undergraduates reduce costs when they choose to attend our college. Zachary Walker has called today's students the last backpack generation. In the future, we will see our students carrying smaller and smaller electronic devices that provide them with ever-increasing amounts of information. Heavy backpacks loaded with texts are on their way out. During Welcome Week, we hand iPads to 440 of our freshmen. They're required to learn this tool as part of their classes in our college. Most go far beyond that. For low-income and some first-generation students, this tool is the only electronic device available to them, and sometimes to their entire family. An iPad or a laptop is essential today. After tuition and a computer, another large expense is textbooks. One way to save money is by using open textbooks. The average student spends about $1,200 on textbooks. We have established a process for faculty to more readily and easily adopt open textbooks, which has led to 11 faculty adopting open textbooks that saved over $217,000 since fall 2011. I would also like to speak in support of the increase for compensation for faculty. This spring, I interviewed over 40 potential faculty for our college that resulted in hiring 10 new faculty. They're coming here to begin their careers, but because we are offering competitive salaries and outstanding graduate students, they're excited about being a part of this university. I was able to retain 2 other faculty, but we lost 1 to another university. Without strong salaries and world-class facilities, we will not keep the faculty we have, and we will not be able to attract the next wave of academic leaders. Thank you.
Brian Daly Arndt.
Good afternoon. My name is Brian Daly Arndt. I'm a leader in ASOP, Alliance of Students Organizing for Power. My colleague Jessie Miller, who is going to be presenting later, is unable to make it because of work. I do have her testimony, so I'm going to present hers instead of mine. She's a Carlson student in the honors program, majoring in public and nonprofit management, also a leader in ASOP. She's a 3.89 GPA and in the top 15% of her college as well as the entire university. She works on research with the assistant dean of CEHD, who wrote a letter that I handed off to Mr. Langworthy, a letter of recommendation saying that she's the most qualified undergraduate he has ever worked with in his 21 years of higher education. Despite her success, she's transferring to Vanderbilt University because of the increase in out-of-state tuition for undergrads. So here's her testimony. Good afternoon. I'm sorry I could not be here, but I work for Disability Services and it's our busiest time of year due to finals. After next week, I will soon be one of many students forced to leave the U of M for financial reasons. Currently, I'm an out-of-state student from Illinois whose tuition rose over $1,000 this past year and will again according to this next year's budget proposal. While it may not seem like much money in light of the total cost of college, it makes a big difference for someone like me who's experiencing financial difficulties. Although FAFSA and the university automatically assume in many ways that our parents help us pay for college, my parents do not help pay at all because they can't. My parents look like they're middle class on paper, but because of the recession and a failing business of my mother's, my parents are currently over $60,000 in debt. And I sadly know that this is a common story. I'm sure that many other students at the U share it. I have had to pay for everything from tuition to housing to food, etc., and I work 25 hours a week. 25 hours a week is a lot, especially considering my unpaid involvement in the community as the vice president of the Model United Nations team, volunteer at an all-girls charter school in St. Paul, and an unpaid internship, as is the standard in my career field. My dream is to be a community organizer or lobbyist and work on educational policy issues. I want to ensure that every child receives a great education by changing every single public school funding formula in every state. Because of my experiences, I'm a big believer that our education system can do great things for our nation's children, and there are currently many structural issues that impact equal access to quality education. If the U wants to keep its out-of-state students like me and attract people who want to change society from all over the country, then it needs to stop burdening out-of-state tuitions, 1/3 of current enrollment, with unmanageable tuition hikes every year. College students are the most likely to stay and work in the states where they attended college, and currently this university and this great state of Minnesota are missing out on some extraordinary people like me from other states. While I appreciate that President Kaler has proposed freezing my peers' tuition, undergraduate residents and state residents, an increase of 1,000 more next year for out-of-state students will deter people like me from attending the U.
Time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Will Durfee.
Chair Beeson, members of the boards of Regents, President Kaler, my name is Will Durfee. I'm a faculty member in mechanical engineering on the Twin Cities campus. I have 3 points to make about the budget. All pertain to FY15, but even more so to FY16, for which budget planning will begin this summer. My first point is about administrative costs. We are 1 year into President Kaler's commitment to reduce administrative costs by $90 million over 6 years. According to the budget, at the end of FY15, we'll be ahead of schedule with an estimated savings of about $36 million. And I congratulate the President on this achievement. At the same time, I urge the board to continue to hold President Kaler's feet to the fire to stay on pace to reach that $90 million. My second point is about compensation. I appreciate the 2.5% average salary increase for all employee groups that is proposed for FY15. While having a modest minimum increase is important for morale, I support the proposed merit-based system for faculty salary increases. This is in line with the concept of rejecting complacency that has emerged from the strategic planning work group. For faculty, rejecting complacency means that we cannot accept being adequate, but must always be pushing ourselves to reach the next level. Merit-based compensation sets an appropriate reward system for this objective. My third and final point is about graduate degree tuitions. I'm going to reinforce the comments made by Regent Omari and others this morning. Looking ahead, we need to develop a long-term plan based on a set of guiding principles for determining graduate program tuition. This is not a simple problem, and the thought process must be different than that used for setting undergraduate tuition. one must consider the actual cost to the student, which in turn gets you into the world of teaching and research assistant salaries, fellowship stipends, and out-of-pocket tuition payments. Here, practices vary widely, and what might work for an engineering graduate program could be disastrous for a humanities graduate program. I understand that the board will be taking a deep dive into graduate education starting this summer. I support you taking time on this important topic, and I believe that if graduate students, faculty, administration, and the board work together, an appropriate plan for graduate tuitions will emerge. In closing, I wish to commend the President and the staff in the Office of Budget and Finance for making all of the operating budget, down to the minutiae, publicly available. While the 78-page budget document is complex, it is not mysterious and enables all university stakeholders to understand the budget decisions and budget directions of the university. Thank you.
Barbara Bazat.
Good afternoon, Regents, President Kaler, Barbara Bazat, AFSCME Local 3937. I'm here to read a prepared statement from our current local union president, Teresa Shunk. Teresa Shunk is a BSAC operator. This is from Teresa. Please accept my apologies for not being able to attend in person. A family emergency has called me out of town. This is Teresa. In today's world, we are faced with pressing issues from unexpected family emergencies, juggling to pay the bills, being productive at work, and creating a sustainable environment. I'm a middle-class single mother of two, and I have worked here at the University of Minnesota for 16 years. Overall, I've been proud to say that I work at the University of Minnesota. However, recently I, as well as other employees, have noticed a change in how frontline staff members are treated. This includes everything from pay discrepancies, minimal pay increases, wage freezes, hiring freezes, and outsourcing of University of Minnesota jobs to an increasing lack of respect for our work. We would like to see the university remain a leader in keeping jobs in Minnesota. The recurring outsourcing of University of Minnesota jobs is wrong. Minnesota is a wonderful state with great resources, and to see the university bypass many of these resources is deplorable. For instance, the shift of the fire life safety operations to another state has cost the constituents of Minnesota as well as the body of the university. Recent events bring to light the probability of real safety issues on this campus. Last month on the St. Paul campus, there was a building that was on fire, not just smoke or smoldering, but a real fire. There was a failure in the system of notification from the fire life safety company now located in Colorado. The discovery of the fire was by chance, and the fire marshal who responded stated that had the fire gone undetected for much longer, the building would have been a total loss. In addition, false fire alarm calls have increased at a cost of city resources to the university that affect the overall budget. Had the fire life safety not been outsourced, this could have been alleviated. The employees of the university who used to do this job have a vested interest in the university and have done their jobs efficiently for years. We care about the U and we care about our jobs. We are the workers who do emergency 911, community nutrition education, IT and telecom work. We keep the phones and the internet running. We staff the libraries, we monitor HVAC and critical research labs. We feed the research animals, provide sign language and captioned interpretation. We provide childcare and so much more on campus. These are technical workers. We say keep our jobs here. Outsourcing the jobs and continuing to consolidate until workers cannot properly do their jobs is a poor choice, and it threatens the safety of the campus. We believe that the university should carry respect in its treatment to all of the frontline staff who make it possible for the researchers to do their important work, as well as to the faculty members who instill the learning skills that university students need to succeed. Respectfully, and thank you for your time, Teresa Shunk, President, AFSCME Local 3937. Thank you.
Anna Kyle.
Thank you, Chair Beeson, President Kaler, and members of the board. My name is Hannah Kyle, and I'm an undergraduate student at the University of Minnesota Duluth. I'm here today speaking on behalf of the University of Minnesota Duluth Student Association. The budget issues that UMD has been facing within the last year are not a secret, and each of you are aware of the challenges we continue to fight. I would like to start off by saying thank you for your continued support in this matter. Rightfully so, you have continued to challenge UMD and the leadership in thinking of new, innovative ways to reduce the deficit we experience. UMD Student Association has partnered with UMD leadership, specifically Chancellor Black and the Chancellor's Cabinet, to provide input to operate more efficiently as an institution. We have represented the approximately 10,000 UMD students in a process called Program Prioritization, which is an initiative to review the entire span of programs, courses, and services that UMD delivers in relation to how they each align with UMD's mission and how they position UMD for growth. Today, I'm here to ask for your continued and additional financial support in this matter. While we have come a long way already, we still have additional challenges. There are many directions we could go to solve this issue. As a UMD student and UMD representative, I ask you to keep the students' interest at the forefront of deliberations and decisions. With students who are heavily burdened in debt, UMD consistently ranks as one of the highest, if not the highest, average student loan debt in Minnesota. Raising tuition is simply not a viable solution for this deficit issue. UMD Student Association will continue to represent, inform, and communicate with students during these challenging times. We have utmost confidence in our administration and appreciate the receptiveness they've had towards our concerns, ideas, and input. In representing close to 10,000 UMD undergraduate students, we now turn to you. Once again, we extend our sincere thanks for your support thus far in the process and ask for continued and additional financial support. Thank you.
Joanna Nunes.
Good afternoon, Board of Regents, President Kaler. I'm here on behalf of Who's Diversity. I'm a graduate student, and I wanted to speak to you about the demands that we have presented to the university. Last week, on April 30th, Who's Diversity, an autonomous collective of students at the University of Minnesota, held a press conference and called upon the university administration to respond to a set of demands necessary for creating a campus environment that is free from discrimination and exploitation against students, staff, faculty, and people who are GLBTQ, working class, disabled, and/or immigrants, and of multiple spiritual beliefs. Through these demands, we seek to address inequalities along multiple axes of difference and to create equitable representation for all communities at all levels of the university. We want to ensure that people on our campus feel safe, welcome, and supported. This has not been the case for everyone, particularly for the communities that I have mentioned above. We have testimonies that illustrate that unwelcoming environments are experienced on this campus, and some of these testimonies were shared during our student panel on March 10th. You may find them in the packets that I will share with you all. All public institutions require an independent system of checks and balances to ensure that organizations are fulfilling their missions to the people they serve. We have willingly stepped up to form a part of the system of checks and balances that will ensure that this university uphold its commitment to diversity. The Who's Diversity Collective is ready to question the university framework of success and progress for our campus, a notion that stifles discussion, prevents growth, and disregards how people from the different communities endure exclusion on campus. Thus, we are calling on all of you to uphold its commitment to diversity and adhere to the demands presented by students who are representative of the communities that embody diversity. We recognize that this will take funding, of course, and so we are asking that you please review our demands and that you consider allocating funding towards this so that we may meet our goals. Among the many demands that we have is increasing faculty of color on this campus and expanding the ethnic studies departments, for example. Please take the time to review these. I will give these to somebody so that you can review them and consider supporting our demands. Thank you.
Russell Lepker.
Good afternoon, Chair Beeson, President Kaler, Regents. Thank you for inviting me. I'm Russell Lepker. I'm Mayo Professor of Public Health and Chair of the Senate Finance and Planning Committee. I think there are many things to be pleased about this year. It's been generally a good year. The holding of undergraduate tuition and fees constant, the start of confronting professional and graduate fees and their debt that we heard from the medical school and from Dean Ames from the veterinary school is an important first step. Similar discussions are going on in the graduate school. We have new money from MnDrive, and we have progress in administrative savings, something we've been discussing for years. You may recall last year there were many concerns in this forum about changes in the health insurance plan, about the so-called Cadillac plan, higher deductibles and co-pays, particularly affecting those with lower incomes. The fund has been established, and 350 people have applied, and $325,000 has been set aside. A very good response to this problem. We are wondering about next year. Finally, the committee has been talking about sustainability, something many universities have been talking about. And what are the goals for 10 years? Some of you may remember President Brunings, not very long ago. And he was talking about the new normal, which was related to changing demographics, spending priorities by the state, which weren't for higher ed, student debt, demands for accountability. These issues have not disappeared. A strategic plan now is being crafted, and the grand challenges, I would suggest, are not just in curriculum, but all the things we face for a successful future at the university. Will there be resources? We hope these issues will be addressed. We expect some pain with change. We can't afford to be everything for everyone. And I hope, and the committee hopes, the Regents will be involved. So today, though, things are improving, and despite what I've heard in the last half hour, there are good things going on and things have been accomplished, and we hope those continue. Thank you.
Lee Turner. And I believe Jessica Miller is not here. Is that correct?
Lee Turner, Associate Professor, Center for Bioethics. I wish to address a subject that has great significance for next year's budget. Yesterday was the 10th anniversary of Dan Markinson's death. Dan committed suicide while he was a research subject in a psychiatric clinical study conducted here at the University of Minnesota. Despite repeated pleas, university officials have never investigated whether Dan was a victim of research misconduct. President Kaler recently ordered a review of current research practices and policies. This review will not address whether the care Dan received met ethical, legal, and clinical standards. It appears that senior administrators have no intention of ever investigating Dan's death. Are you prepared for the possibility that if a legitimate, independent investigation occurs, the University of Minnesota could be exposed as an institution where research misconduct occurred and you dismissed all requests to investigate possible wrongdoing? Before Dan entered the CAFE trial, he was repeatedly deemed psychotic and incapable of making health-related decisions. A study coordinator who evaluated Dan's ability to provide consent and enrolled him in the trial not only had a financial conflict of interest, but also was not qualified to assess Dan's decision-making capacity. Why has no one investigated whether Dan was capable of providing informed consent? When Dan entered the study, he was under a court-ordered stay of commitment. He had to follow a doctor treatment plan. Why have you not investigated whether the threat of involuntary commitment was used to coerce Dan into the CAFE study? As Dan's health deteriorated, his mother, Mary Weiss, pleaded with his psychiatrist to remove Dan from the trial. She frantically warned them that Dan was at risk of killing himself or someone else. Shortly after, Dan cut his throat with a box cutter, plunged the knife in his fist into his abdomen, and bled to death in the bathtub of a halfway house. Had Dan been removed from the CAFE study and provided more personalized care after his mother's warnings, perhaps he would be alive today. A vigil downstairs today commemorated the 10th anniversary of his death. There are many indications that other research subjects have been harmed. 3 individuals contacted me and pointed to the Markinson case as indicative of what their loved ones endured. Additional individuals reporting research abuse contacted Professor Carl Elliott. There are other signs of research misconduct, but to date you have ignored all of them. As you review next year's budget, I urge you to consider the possibility that the University of Minnesota is one investigation away from being exposed as the site of a major research scandal. Are you prepared for what a thorough investigation of psychiatric trials here might find? Do you know how many psychiatric research subjects have died or been seriously injured here? Why are open records requests to obtain such data routinely stonewalled? Are you aware of the loss of federal funding, mass faculty departures, and public outrage that occurs when research scandals are exposed? Are you ready for the possibility of multiple lawsuits brought by victims of psychiatric research misconduct? Will you remove President Kaler and other university officials from their positions if it emerges that research misconduct occurred and yet they resisted repeated calls for an investigation? Have you considered the economic and reputational harm this university will suffer if it emerges that faculty members mistreated vulnerable patients and no one in a position of authority acted to stop the abuse or investigate reports of wrongdoing? We have a responsibility to put the safety and health of this state's most vulnerable citizens above all other considerations.
Your time is up.
Has this institution budgeted for the consequences of failing to fulfill this moral obligation?
We're going to have you removed unless you stop.
I'm finished, thank you. For your own self-interest, I urge you to do something.
Please bear with me. I haven't slept in 3 days and just finished my finals, and now I'm sniffly. So I'll try to not do that. Thank you for having me here today. My name is Ashley Hall, and I'm here on behalf of graduate and professional students, specifically the College of Veterinary Medicine. I am an upcoming third-year student in the fall. I have been actively involved within the Senate, SSC, and GAPSA, and authored the resolution for a fixed tuition program in professional schools. The resolution modeled after the Med School's Guaranteed Tuition program that was implemented 10 years ago. Through my research this last year, I quickly discovered why other programs have not implemented such a plan, which is due to the fact that other professional programs are funded differently than the medical school and rely very heavily on student tuition to fund their budgets. Some programs rely up to 70% on their students to fund their programs. This matter has only been aggravated by the fact that the state has continued to make cuts and professional programs have had no choice but to continually increase tuition. In order for these programs to implement a fixed tuition program, tuition rates would need to be incredibly inflated. Which would be counterintuitive. Increasing tuition is something that happens at the university level across the country. However, what makes University of Minnesota unique is the fact that many of our programs are the most expensive to attend in the state and even in the country. It is cheaper to attend, I am from the veterinary program and have the second highest out-of-state rate in the country. It is cheaper to attend Wisconsin's veterinary program as an out-of-state student than to attend University of Minnesota's program as an in-state student. As an out-of-state student, I will have nearly $300,000 in debt and will be entering a field with little loan forgiveness and a low starting salary, which limits my career choices as well as my peers and leaves underserviced areas in the industry empty-handed. This is a problem in other professions as well. We are all well aware of the incredible financial burden that comes with attending many of our programs, but making the step to support a freeze in the College of Veterinary Medicine speaks volumes. I think next year we should focus on trying to get more funding at a state level for professional and graduate students as we have done in the past several years for undergraduate students. We have begun to make incredible strides with undergraduates and need to begin addressing issues with professional students as well, although there is much work to be done on both levels. A tuition freeze across the board is not a fix-all problem, but it is a start while we work at the university level to explore options such as open access and open educational resources as a means to lower university costs. I want to thank President Kaler, the Board of Regents, and administration, and support the CVM freeze allocated in the budget. I hope this is just the beginning of our journey to lowering the cost of education for not only professional students, but students throughout the university. The University of Minnesota is the heart of our state, and we need to make further investments in our students. Thank you.
Christopher Gedowitz.
Yes, and you said it right. Thank you. It's nice to be back before you guys. I was here last year. My name is Chris Gedowitz. I am here today to speak as a recent graduate of the University, a community and campus activist, and now an educator in North Minneapolis. I am here to suggest that there's a growing gap between what the university says and what it does. First, in regards to the tuition freeze. While this madman-like slogan veils what continues to be a policy of higher education extortion, administrative corruption and bureaucratic racketeering, the administration only continues to maintain the status quo for what will certainly be the next bubble to burst in our economy. The continued increase in student debt in recent years has not in any way equated to an improvement in education, but rather has served in expanding administration and its increased salaries. The reality is that while resident undergraduates will continue to be extorted at the same status quo rate, non-resident and graduate students will see the burden of debts further shifted onto their shoulders. Hedge fund managers and Wall Street bankers would certainly admire your tireless efforts. When tuition is actually dropped, that will be news worth celebrating. In the meantime, the cost of education maintains an institution that is still not inclusive for many, including many of the young people that I work with in North Minneapolis. The word diversity has often been used by administrators here at the university, which here comes to mean students of a diverse background can sit silently and pose for photographs for university brochures, but dare not stand up, speak out, and fight for their right for inclusion, equity, and a greater representation at this university. The attempts to silence and punish dissent from members of whose diversity and Students for a Democratic Society is disgraceful. Crime and safety are two other words that the administration has a funny definition about. Safety on this campus has come to mean building lockdowns, restricted public access, crime alerts that lead to police racial profiling, and fear of students by their peers. When the university talks about crime, it never talks about the criminal conduct committed by the university in collaboration with corporations that led to medical research that killed people like Dan Markingson. Crime alerts also fail to warn students about the arrival of real criminals on campus, such as Condoleezza Rice, violators of both domestic and international law. Then again, it might be confusing for the university to put out a crime alert for someone that was invited as a distinguished honored lecturer on a subject on which she has no expertise. Perhaps next time, one of our own professors might be willing to speak on such a subject for less than $150,000. We must commend President Kaler, though, for protecting her freedom of speech when she could receive that $150,000 and a stage at Northrop. We must thank him for his efforts to silence the dangerous, peaceful protesters who have exercised their democratic rights. His public demonization and wielding of full force of university punishment for the practice of free speech is of vital importance to maintaining academic freedom and civil dialogue. Thank you and good luck.
Keaton Miller.
How you doing, Eric?
I'm sorry, Jonathan.
I'm Jonathan from Students for a Democratic Society. I guess I told someone that I was going to talk about the budget. But since I don't really know much about the budget, I'm not going to do that. Although, if you pay me $150,000, I'll happily speak about something I don't know anything about. Kind of like Condoleezza Rice speaking about justice. Instead, I'm going to focus my comments on one issue that really pissed me off. It's an issue that I even brought to the president of the university, but he hasn't done anything about it. On a cold Monday in February, I entered Wilson Library and went up the stairs to find a place to study. That day, I witnessed a violent act of police brutality directed at a library patron that involved being slammed into the wall by two officers, an invasive and unjustified pat-down, and forced eviction from the library. All of this for reading books and appearing to be homeless. I later called UMPD to file a complaint regarding the conduct of its officers. Dave Wilsey confessed that there's nothing in library rules, university policy, or state statute that warrants the eviction of people experiencing homelessness from public space, but explained that UMPD has been under tremendous pressure from the administration to take extraordinary security measures. He then went on to explicitly state that, and I quote, "Some degree of class profiling is necessary to ensure the security of campus," end quote. Shortly after this incident occurred, we learned that the Board of Regents supported Kaler's new security platform, which involves locking down buildings, expanding the police force, and collaborating with the brutally racist Minneapolis Police Department. But none of this makes any progress at addressing the root causes of crime, a double nexus that involves not only material conditions of deprivation, but also the denial of dignity. Indeed, since the closing of the General College, and with skyrocketing tuition, in many ways the university has been the principal propagator of this double nexus in the Twin Cities. What this really amounts to is the university's latest attempt at exclusionary education. While the university purports to be a place of diversity, opportunity, and access, the reality is that the university today doesn't exist to provide free and safe space to think and speak critically. It exists to make money. And those who inhibit the university's quest for profit are silenced and kept out. Shortly after this incident took place, I was approached by another student who explained that it's not the presence of community members on campus that makes her feel unsafe, but rather it's police officers running around with guns, barking orders at innocent people reading books that makes her feel unsafe. As I said from the outset, the administration and police have known of this incident for a long time. They have done nothing. Pamela Wheelock told SDS that she would reply to her. Please don't cut me off. I'm the one who pays your bills.
Your time is
Pamela
expired.
Wheelock told SDS that she would reply to our letter, but we're still waiting to hear from her 3 months later. Kaler told me during office hours he was going to take care of it, but instead he blew it off. So I'm here to remind him that we haven't forgotten about it.
You need to stop. Keaton Miller.
I'm Keaton Miller, a graduate student in the Department of Economics. President Kaler has called graduate education, quote, the signature of a research university. Regent Cohen has said, quote, superior graduate education distinguishes a great university. So why did we remind you of what graduate students do? It's simple. When we look at the actions of this administration, when we hear the stories from our 8,000 constituents, we're confused about what you actually value. According to the Office of Institutional Research, the university has cut its support for graduate students in real terms by 10% in the last 5 years. At the same time, you've increased tuition by 20%. But it's not just a high-level trend. For example, the graduate school has offered professionalization workshops for the last several years. These workshops have included things like job search and interviewing skills. According to a COGS and OIR survey, 25% of all graduate students have attended these workshops, since many colleges don't offer anything specifically aimed at graduate students. But the person responsible for running these sessions has been reassigned. The quarter-time position has been eliminated. Think about that. A program used by a quarter of all graduate students, a service that others don't provide, and this university can't spare a quarter of a person to keep it running. Graduate students provide over half the funding for international student and scholar services, and yet ISSS is almost entirely geared toward undergraduates. Academic Affairs admits that graduate instructors consistently score better than faculty on teaching evaluations, and yet the university doesn't offer any recognition of these outstanding instructors. COGS does. The Student Parent Help Center has a list of resources for graduate student parents. The only thing on it, a link to the COGS website. Graduate students are supposed to be included in the Student Senate, but undergraduates are allowed to choose those representatives. Graduate students aren't even allowed to pick their own representative to your board. Undergraduate leaders get to choose that too. Students aren't the only ones with concerns. The Special Committee on Graduate Education, convened by Provost Hanson and composed of faculty, summed up the situation quite plainly. Quote, we have been short-sighted in our management of graduate education. Look, we recognize the difficult environment the university faces, but we're tired of hearing empty words. We're tired of hearing yet again that the training we depend on is being slashed to mollify some penny pincher in the opinion pages. Instead, COGS has tried to pick up the slack. Among other things, this year we organized research symposia, interdisciplinary panel discussions. We helped students travel to research conferences when their departments couldn't afford to, and we nurtured a social group for international graduate students, the first in the Big Ten. The point is this, we're doing our part, teaching Minnesota's undergrads every day, and then staying up all night producing the cutting-edge research that powers this university's reputation. In other words, we have Minnesota's back. Do you have ours?
Sandy Sherman.
Good afternoon. I'm Sandy Sherman, AFSCME Local 3800's representative to the university's Benefits Advisory Committee. I'm speaking to you today about our frustration that the university administration has been completely unwilling, both in bargaining and in the Benefits Advisory Committee, to discuss any proposals that might mitigate the costs of health benefits that employees must pay. I remind the Regents that I spoke to you last year about the cost shifts that were placing an ever-increasing burden on employees in terms of deductibles and copay increases. We were opposed to the cost shifting and attempted to enlighten you about the burden that this places on staff whose paychecks are barely enough to make ends meet. We suggested a variety of alternative ways to approach the healthcare issue. In contract negotiations, AFSCME Local 3800 put forward a proposal for a sliding scale premium structure based on income. This is not a radical idea. The University of California system, Baylor, the University of Pennsylvania, and state employees in Illinois, to name a few, have this. The administration told our union that it could not negotiate something that affected all employees. They would not discuss it. So I raised this for discussion in the BAC. What was the administration's response there? We can't discuss this in the BAC because it's being discussed at the negotiating table. I felt like I was in a bad movie version of 1984. Vice President Kathy O'Brien's explanation for not allowing discussion in the BAC more recently was that the contracts that with AFSCME had already been settled. This is so disingenuous that other members of the committee felt compelled to challenge it. We were asking for the opportunity to hear from experts who had implemented this sliding scale plan so we could learn about it. I ask you, what is the administration afraid of? Why does it refuse to allow an employee committee that was set up to advise the administration on benefits the right to hear a presentation from other employers about their decision to adopt a premium structure based on wages so that we could consider whether this was a viable alternative? What message does this convey about the administration's real views of all the faculty and Senate consultative committees that it sets up? Other committee members are now asking, are we just focus groups where the administration can test its plans before launching them, or are we truly consultative? I think what's happening here tells the answer to that. We in AFSCME Local 3800 are committed to continuing to fight for affordable, quality health care for all employees at the University of Minnesota. We invite the Board of Regents to join that effort by participating in a forum that can hear alternatives to the continual cost shifting onto the backs of employees that is the current model of health care benefits at the U. We will be organizing such an event in the fall since the Benefits Advisory Committee refuses to do so, and we hope that all employee groups will participate. Thank you.
Joelle Stangler.
Just going to put this over here. Thank you, Chair Beeson, members of the board. My name is Joelle Stangler, and I'm the incoming president of the Minnesota Student Association, the undergraduate student government for the University of Minnesota Twin Cities campus. I'd like to thank the board and President Kaler for the opportunity to voice comments on the proposed budget. In addition to myself and 9 other student speakers offering comments today, there are many students in the audience to demonstrate their support for college affordability. I'd also like to thank President Kaler briefly for success in the last biennium budget and prioritizing undergraduate education with the historic undergraduate tuition freeze. The Minnesota Student Association looks forward to doing our part next spring to successfully obtain funding for another 2 years of frozen tuition. While I'm not an expert about revenues and expenditures, I am an expert of how my personal college affordability story has affected me as an individual, my family, and the state of Minnesota. I'm going to share it briefly and move on to address 3 aspects of the proposed budget. I come from a family of educators. My parents both received K-12 degrees in K-12 education and paid their way through college on student loans. Knowing that the salaries of 2 educators was not going to be enough to support their kids going to school, my dad went back to school to earn his master's and doctorate degree in education. Although he currently makes over $100,000 a year as an administrator, he has years of school loans and personal debt, which he is still repaying. My parents' previous years of a modest income and my dad's debt load are not directly reflected on the FAFSA and led to my EFC equaling more than the cost of education and my aid equaling 0. Due to the lack of aid available to me, my parents had to rethink their employment and education in order to afford my college education. Ultimately, my mom left her job as a K-12 educator for a more lucrative option in the private sector in order to afford my college education. My mom was passionate about education and her students and had consistently had the top scores on state tests among 5th grade teachers in our school district. She would often come home to test her lessons on me and my brothers and ask for feedback to tweak her techniques. She was passionate and dedicated to the education of Minnesotans. While my mom lost a career she was passionate about, Minnesota lost a top educator because higher education was not affordable. My story is not unique. Many families struggle to afford their child's education. Steps like President Kaler's proposed tuition freeze are a step in the right direction. But there are 3 parts of this budget that I would like to address today. The first item is the increase in room and board. For a double occupancy room, students pay roughly $675 for every month they are in a residence hall. With the proposed increases less than 3%, additional costs to students add up quickly, and any additional expenses can result in students increasing their hours of work and incurring more debt.
The second point I'd like to address is affordable college for all students, including non-residents. I'd like to thank President Kaler for keeping our non-resident costs below other Big Ten schools. However, I ask that we consider the implications of this increase in costs and work towards being more transparent with non-resident students about the total cost of their attendance. With the possibility that students of our university will continue to work or attend school in Minneapolis, St. Paul, or elsewhere in Minnesota, we need to be cognizant of the consequences an increase in their tuition, subsequently their debt load, will have on the state of Minnesota's economy. The third point I'd like to address is embedded within the resident tuition line item, but also addresses the overall cost. Thank you for your time.
Michael Fowl.
Chair Beeson, President Kaler, members of the board, my name is Michael Fowl. I'm an associate professor in the Department of Communication at the University of Minnesota Duluth and the president of the University Education Association, our faculty union at UMD. Let me begin by thanking the president and the board for the attention you've shown to our campus recently. President Kaler and his team braved a snowstorm in a two-wheel drive vehicle to visit us earlier this semester. Vice President Fitzenreuter, who I hesitate to call Fitz only because that was the nickname of the Edmund Fitzgerald, recently gave his Finance 101 presentation to our campus in several locales, and finally several of you visited our campus just last week and spent some quality time, so thank you. Let me emphasize that everyone in Duluth is profoundly grateful for the assistance this budget brings to our campus, but many of us are concerned that our unique and essential place within the system is at risk. The board has discussed the so-called coordinate campuses, but the relationship between these campuses and the system remains somewhat unclear. On one hand, we in Duluth recognize that we are not the equal of our flagship Twin Cities campus, except, of course, during those years when our Bulldog hockey teams trounced the Gophers, that is. On the other hand, we're generally dissatisfied when we're told that we should consider ourselves just one of 51 separate funding units in the system. We do not see our campus as the equivalent, for instance, of the Twin Cities College of Liberal Arts. In fact, UMD is alone among the outstate campuses in that we are a comprehensive university, providing our students depth within a wide range of disciplines from the fine arts to the sciences, along with breadth through our liberal education curriculum. We provide a top-notch education to over 10,000 students annually, and we are unique in the system. Though not as research-focused as our flagship campus, we too are driven to discover. After the Twin Cities campus, UMD is unrivaled in the state as far as sponsored projects and research productivity. The Regents who just visited our campus are well aware of the great things happening at UMD in the STEM disciplines, and we're strong in the humanities and social sciences as well. We're research-focused. With a teaching load appropriate to that goal, we've successfully attracted a generation of talented young teacher scholars. Yet we're also undergraduate-focused. This means that our students, when they're not green, that is, from day one receive the attention of faculty, not grad assistants, and they benefit from a research focus that keeps course materials at the cutting edge. And faculty often collaborate directly with undergraduate students in their research. Given this unique niche, combining research with undergraduate education, we are happy to see this year's budget allocation as a step in the right direction. But more budgetary attention is needed. UMD too is becoming increasingly tuition-driven. Our tuition is now just a few $100s below that paid by Twin Cities students, and this puts us at a significant disadvantage, for we compete not with the Big Ten, but with campuses like North Dakota State, where tuition is many thousands of dollars lower. In an environment where higher institutions are competing for a smaller pool of students, UMD students are graduating with the highest debt in the state. We need to think not just about freezing tuition, but reducing it. Yet reducing tuition without alternative funding would gut the very programs that give our undergraduate students a truly unique experience. Thank you.
Our last speaker today is Ryan Olson.
Thank you, Chair Beeson, President Kaler, and members of the Regents. My name is Ryan Olson. I'm a student senator from the College of Liberal Arts, and I currently am studying political science and economics. It is my life goal to be a social studies teacher one day. Like plenty of other students, though, I often wonder if I'm making the right career choice, asking myself, do I really want to go into education? I worry that, although this career path may be my passion, I will not have an income that allows me to pay off my debt. In 2013, the state of Minnesota chose to reinvigorate its investment into the University of Minnesota after a decade of disinvestment. With it came a tuition freeze for in-state undergraduates. This was made possible by outstanding efforts by President Kaler, the Regents, and a high level of student activism from around the system, and I just want to reiterate my thanks to the President and Regents for their work. So thank you. 300 students, many of whom are in the room today, Attended the Support the U Day rally last year, emphasizing the importance of the university and its students to the state. This means that 300 students, including myself, skipped class to talk about the importance of keeping tuition affordable here at the U, which I think is pretty incredible. I look forward to this continued relationship between the university and student advocates to keep the University of Minnesota affordable. While the legislature guaranteed enough funding to keep in-state and undergraduate tuition frozen for this upcoming year, it has been coupled with tuition increases almost everywhere else. 3% increases have been suggested in the following programs: dentistry, law, pharmacy, the MBA program, and all graduate programs. All of those are in-state and out-of-state increases, except for pharmacy, which includes just a 2% increase on out-of-state students. For out-of-state undergraduates attending the Twin Cities campus, you'll notice the increase is significantly more, 5.5% or $1,000. The University of Minnesota is relatively less expensive than other institutions, but this does not mean that it is not expensive. While the increase still allows us to have one of the lowest out-of-state tuition rates in the Big Ten, I must remind you and ask you to recognize this increase affects 1/3 of Twin Cities undergraduates. This is $1,000 extra that families across the nation looking to send their students to our school must now find. Perhaps some families will be able to pay for this increase out of pocket, but in some cases, this cost will be put on the student. To put this into perspective, that is 100 hours of work at $10 an hour, which is working 10 hours a week for 10 weeks. Which means, if I did my math right, which I hope I did, it's an out-of-state student. If an out-of-state student wishes to work during the school year to offset this increase of $1,000, they will have to work 10 hours a week at a good-paying job for nearly 3/4 of the semester. Right now, 40% of University of Minnesota undergraduates believe the cost of attendance is not manageable, and that's according to the SARU. Furthermore, the president's budget includes an increase in room and board across all 5 campuses. This result of an increase in the cost of attendance for out-of-state and in-state students who choose to live on campus, which tends to be the safest and best option because students have more positive relationships, feel more engaged in the university community, and have better GPAs. Whether it is from the legislature or our peers, colleagues, or students, I have no doubt all of us have heard about the rising cost of college. However, I do not believe we have heard about it enough. As a student who serves on the university's shared governance system, which involves a committee in finance and planning, I'm surprised to see that it still lacks. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, all testifiers. This does conclude the public hearing of the Board of the Regents of the University of Minnesota. This meeting is concluded.